The ravens circled the iron-grey sky above Thornfield as Elena Blackwood trudged through the muddy path leading home. Her simple woolen dress, patched in several places, clung uncomfortably to her slender frame as the autumn drizzle intensified. The basket on her arm held only a few turnips and a small portion of salted meat, barely enough to feed her family for 2 days. The market in the village of Ravenscroft had been sparse today, merchants unwilling to part with their wares for the meagre coins she offered. Eleanor's dark hair, escaping from beneath her worn hood, whipped across her face in the rising wind. Her green eyes, too large for her gaunt face, surveyed the barren fields surrounding their tenant farm. The crops had failed again this year. The soil, once rich and fertile, had grown increasingly unyielding during the last 5 harvests. Like most families in the valley, the Blackwoods teetered on the edge of ruin. As she approached the dilapidated cottage, smoke curling weakly from its chimney, Elena steeled herself for what awaited within. Her father's cough had worsened over the last fortnight. Without proper medicine they could not afford, she feared the worst. Eleanor, her younger brother Thomas called, rushing out to meet her, his eyes wide with fear. At 12, he was already too thin, his clothes hanging from his frame. They've come again. Father tried to send them away, but... Eleanor quickened her pace, dread pooling in her stomach. The tax collectors had visited twice already this month, each time threatening eviction. The landowner, Lord Rothven, was notorious for his merciless treatment of those who failed to pay their dues. Inside the cottage, she found her father sitting at their worn table, face buried in his hands. His shoulders shook with the effort to suppress his cough. Across from him sat a man Elena had never seen before, tall, elegantly dressed in black, with a silver-tipped cane resting against his chair. He was not one of the usual tax collectors. "Father?" Elena set down her basket, moving cautiously toward them. The stranger turned, and Eleanor felt her breath catch. His face was unnaturally pale, as if carved from the finest alabaster, contrasting sharply with eyes of such deep brown they appeared almost black in the dim light. His features were aristocratic, high cheekbones, straight nose, a mouth that seemed carved by an artist's hand. Despite his apparent youth, perhaps 30 at most, his presence carried an inexplicable weight of age and authority. "Ah, Miss Blackwood," the stranger said, his voice a cultured, melodious baritone. "Your father and I were just discussing your family's predicament." Elena's father looked up, his eyes red-rimmed and desperate. "Elena, this is Lord Darius Moorgrave. He's come with a proposition." Lord Moorgrave. The name sent a chill through Elena's body. Everyone in the valley knew of Castle Moorgrave, the imposing fortress that loomed on the mountainside overlooking the valley. Its master was rarely seen, a reclusive nobleman who, according to local whispers, had inherited the castle under mysterious circumstances several decades ago. Some said he was the same Darius Moorgrave who had owned the lands a generation before, unchanged by time. Others claimed he was a descendant who bore an uncanny resemblance to his predecessor. "Lord Rothven has sold your debt to me," Moorgrave explained, his gaze never leaving Elena's face. "Along with the ownership of this farm." "But how? Why would you—" Eleanor began, confusion mingling with fear. "Your family owes 300 gold crowns," Moorgrave continued, ignoring her question. "A sum I doubt you can produce." He tapped his fingers against the table, nails unusually long and well-maintained for a nobleman. "However, I am willing to forgive this debt entirely." Elena's father broke into a fit of coughing, his entire body shaking with the effort. Thomas hurried to fetch him water. "What is your price, my lord?" Eleanor asked, suspicious of such unexpected charity. Lord Moorgrave's lips curved into a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Marriage, Miss Blackwood. I require a wife, and I have chosen you." The silence that followed was absolute, broken only by her father's ragged breathing. "This is absurd," Elena finally managed. "You don't know me. I'm a farmer's daughter with nothing to offer a lord. I know enough, Morgrave replied. I've observed you in the village. You are kind to those less fortunate, you care deeply for your family, and you possess a quiet dignity despite your circumstances. He paused. And you are uncommonly beautiful, though you seem unaware of it. Eleanor felt her cheeks flush despite her anger. I am not a commodity to be purchased, my lord. Eleanor, her father pleaded, his voice breaking. Please, listen. Lord Morgrave has also promised to provide medical care for me, education for Thomas, and protection for both of us. A generous dowry indeed, Morgrave added. But I require an answer tonight. Accept, and your family's future is secured. Refuse. He let the implication hang in the air. Eleanor looked at her father, whose illness had carved deep lines into his once handsome face. At Thomas, whose future would be limited to the same cycle of poverty and hardship unless something changed. She thought of the coming winter, the empty storehouse, the mounting debts. If I agree, she said carefully, I would have your word that my family will be cared for, even after my father's health fails. You have my solemn vow, Morgrave replied. They will want for nothing. Then I accept, Elena whispered, the words tasting like ash in her mouth. Lord Morgrave stood, towering over her. Excellent. The wedding will take place at Castle Morgrave in 3 days' time. I shall send a carriage for you at dawn. He reached into his coat and produced a small velvet pouch, which he placed on the table. A physician will arrive tomorrow to attend to your father. Consider this an advance on our arrangement. With that, he bowed slightly and departed, leaving the cottage door open to the gathering darkness outside. Eleanor watched as his tall figure disappeared into the mist, a raven descending to perch on his shoulder just before he vanished from view. Her father's broken sob brought her attention back to the cottage. I'm sorry, Elena, so sorry. If there were any other way— There isn't, she said, her voice steadier than she felt. And it's done now. She opened the pouch to find several gold coins and a small vial of medicine, more wealth than she had ever held in her hands before, the price of her freedom. That night, after her father and brother had fallen asleep, Eleanor sat by the dying embers of their hearth, contemplating the bargain she had struck. Marriage to a stranger, a nobleman shrouded in rumours and mystery. She had heard the whispers about Castle Morgrave and its master, tales told in hushed voices around village fires. Some said Lord Morgrave only emerged at night, that he had not aged a day in decades, that livestock sometimes disappeared near his lands, only to be found drained of blood. Others claimed to have seen strange lights in the castle windows during the new moon, and to have heard unearthly music drifting down from the mountain on windless nights. Nonsense and superstition, Eleanor had always thought. But now, remembering the unnatural paleness of Morgrave's skin, the strange intensity of his gaze, and the ancient weight that seemed to rest upon his shoulders despite his youthful appearance, she wondered if there might be truth behind the tales. The following days passed in a blur. True to his word, Lord Morgrave sent a physician who provided her father with medicines that eased his coughing. Food deliveries arrived, filling their empty pantry. The tax collectors did not return. On the eve of her wedding, Eleanor packed her few belongings into a small trunk. She owned little worth taking: a book of poetry her mother had given her before she died, a pressed flower from her childhood, a simple silver locket containing a lock of her mother's hair. You don't have to do this, Thomas said from the doorway of their shared bedroom. His young face was solemn in the candlelight. Yes, I do, Eleanor replied gently. And it's not so terrible, Thomas. I'll have a comfortable life, and you and father will be provided for. But the stories about him are just stories, she interrupted, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Lord Morgrave has been nothing but courteous. Thomas stepped forward and pressed something into her hand, a roughly carved wooden figure of a raven. I made this for you, so you'll remember us. Elena pulled her brother into a fierce embrace, fighting back tears. "I could never forget you, and I'll visit when I can." Her father stood in the kitchen doorway, watching her with sorrowful eyes. "Elena, if you're afraid, if you want to refuse, I've made my choice," she said firmly. "This is our chance, Father, for all of us." Dawn broke cold and misty on her wedding day. The promised carriage arrived, an elegant black conveyance drawn by 4 midnight horses, their breath steaming in the chill air. The coachman, silent and stoic, loaded her trunk while Elena said her goodbyes. "Remember your promise," she whispered to her father as she embraced him. "Take your medicine. Let Thomas continue his studies." Her father nodded, too overcome to speak. Thomas clutched her hand until the last moment, only releasing it when she stepped into the carriage. As they pulled away, Eleanor watched her home recede into the distance. The cottage had never been much, but it had been hers, a place of safety and love, despite their hardships. Now she journeyed toward an unknown future with a man, or something perhaps not entirely man, she barely knew. The carriage wound its way up the mountain road, climbing higher than Elena had ever ventured. The valley spread out below, a patchwork of fields and forests shrouded in morning mist. After an hour's journey, they rounded a bend, and Castle Morgrave came into view. It was both more and less imposing than the story suggested. The central keep rose in Gothic splendor, its spires piercing the low clouds, wings extended on either side, their many windows like watchful eyes. The stone was dark, almost black in places, yet the architecture possessed an undeniable beauty, a melancholy grandeur that spoke of both power and solitude. The carriage passed through iron gates and into a courtyard where a small contingent of servants waited in neat rows. They bowed as Elena descended, her simple blue dress, her finest, fluttering in the mountain breeze. An elderly woman stepped forward, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Welcome to Castle Morgrave, Miss Blackwood. I am Mrs. Harker, the housekeeper. If you'll follow me, I'll show you to your chambers. Lord Morgrave requests that you rest before the ceremony this evening." Eleanor followed, acutely aware of the curious gazes of the servants. The castle interior was a study in contrasts. Some rooms were dusty and neglected, while others gleamed with polished wood and fresh tapestries. They passed a library with shelves reaching to the ceiling, a music room with a magnificent pianoforte, and numerous closed doors that concealed who knew what secrets. Her assigned chambers were unexpectedly lovely, a suite of rooms decorated in shades of blue and silver, with large windows overlooking the valley below. A fire burned merrily in the grate, dispelling the castle's pervasive chill. "Your bath is prepared through there," Mrs. Harker indicated a door. "The wedding dress is laid out in the dressing room. Dinner will be served at sunset, followed by the ceremony in the castle chapel." "Mrs. Harker," Eleanor ventured before the woman could leave, "how long have you served Lord Morgrave?" The housekeeper's expression remained impassive. "Longer than most, Miss Blackwood." "And what manner of man is he?" "Truly?" A brief hesitation. "It is not my place to discuss my master, miss. You will form your own impressions soon enough." She paused at the door. "I will say only this. Appearances can be deceiving, and Castle Morgrave holds many secrets. Some doors should remain closed, for your own safety." With that cryptic warning she departed, leaving Elena alone with her mounting apprehension. The bath and fresh clothing brought some comfort, but Elena's mind raced with questions. She explored her chambers, finding an extensive wardrobe filled with gowns in her size, jewels she could never have afforded, and books, so many books. It seemed Lord Morgrave had prepared meticulously for her arrival. As the afternoon waned, Elena stood at the window watching the sun descend behind the mountains. The valley below was already cloaked in shadow, lights beginning to twinkle in the village of Ravenscroft. From this height, her family's farm was merely a speck in the patchwork of fields. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. A maid entered, introducing herself as Beth, sent to help Elena dress for the evening. The wedding gown was a masterpiece of ivory silk and delicate lace, far finer than anything Eleanor had ever touched, let alone worn. As Beth arranged Eleanor's dark hair in an elegant coiffure adorned with pearl pins, she chattered nervously about the castle. "The West Wing is being renovated for you, miss. His lordship has ordered new furnishings from the capital. No one's lived in those rooms for decades, not since—" She stopped abruptly. "Since when?" Eleanor prompted. "Oh, it's nothing, miss. Just old stories, not suitable for your wedding day." Beth's hands trembled slightly as she placed a delicate veil on Eleanor's head. The dinner that followed was a strange affair. Elena ate alone at one end of a massive table in the great hall, served course after course of exquisite food by silent servants. Lord Morgrave did not appear. When she inquired after him, Mrs. Harker merely stated that the master would meet her in the chapel. As the last plate was cleared away, Elena was led through torch-lit corridors to a small stone chapel nestled within the castle walls. Ancient stained glass depicted scenes she didn't recognize, strange symbols and figures that seemed neither fully Christian nor pagan, but something in between. Only when she stood before the altar did Lord Morgrave emerge from the shadows at the side of the chapel. He wore black formal attire, his only adornment a blood-red ruby at his throat. In the flickering candlelight, his pallor seemed even more pronounced, his eyes darker and more fathomless. A priest Elena didn't recognize conducted the brief ceremony. She spoke her vows in a clear voice, determined not to show fear, though her heart pounded so loudly she was certain everyone must hear it. When Lord Morgrave took her hand to place the ring, a band of white gold set with black diamonds, his touch was cool, almost cold. "With this ring, I bind you to me," he said, the traditional words carrying an unsettling weight in his melodious voice. "For all the days of your life." The ceremony concluded, and Eleanor found herself married to a stranger, Lady Morgrave of Castle Morgrave. The priest and servants quietly withdrew, leaving the newlyweds alone in the chapel. "You look beautiful, Elena," Lord Morgrave Darius said, studying her with those unfathomable eyes. "Thank you, my lord," she replied stiffly. "Darius, please, we are husband and wife now." He offered his arm. "Come, I would show you something." He led her through corridors she hadn't yet seen, up winding staircases, until they emerged onto a high balcony overlooking the mountains. The night spread before them, a tapestry of stars brilliant in the clear air. "Castle Morgrave has been my home for a very long time," Darius said quietly. "Longer than you might believe possible. It has been lonely." "Why choose me?" Elena asked, the question that had plagued her since his proposition. "There must be many noble women who would gladly accept your suit." A shadow passed over his face. "I have had my fill of nobility and their machinations. You possess qualities rare in this world, Elena. Compassion, loyalty, courage. I've watched you in the village these past months, how you care for your family, how you help others despite your own hardships. You've been watching me." Eleanor stepped back, unsettled, observing. He corrected. "I needed to be certain." "Certain of what?" "That you were strong enough." His gaze shifted to the night sky. "Life with me will not be easy, Elena. There are aspects of my existence that would terrify most people." A chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air crept down Elena's spine. "The villagers tell stories about you, about this castle." "I imagine they do." His smile was tinged with bitterness. "Some may even contain a grain of truth." Elena gathered her courage. "Are you human?" The question hung between them, carried away on the night breeze. For a long moment Darius didn't respond. When he finally turned to her, his eyes had changed, darkness consuming the irises completely, a faint red glow emanating from their depths. "I was once," he said softly, "a very long time ago." Before Elena could react, a piercing scream echoed from deep within the castle. Darius's head snapped toward the sound, his expression transforming from contemplation to alarm. "It's impossible," he muttered. "The binding should hold for another fortnight at least." "What was that?" Elena demanded, her heart racing. "Something that should not be awake." Darius seized her shoulders, his grip firm but not painful. "Listen carefully, Elena. Return to your chambers and lock the door. Do not emerge until I come for you, no matter what you hear. But please," for the first time, real emotion colored his voice. Fear, not for himself, but for her. "I cannot protect you if you don't obey me in this." Another scream sounded, closer now, followed by the crash of breaking glass. Without another word, Darius pushed Elena toward the corridor, then turned and moved with inhuman speed in the direction of the disturbance. Left alone, Elena hesitated only briefly before making her decision. She was Lady Morgrave now, mistress of this castle, wife to whatever creature Darius might be. She would not cower in her chambers while her new home descended into chaos. Gathering her courage and the skirts of her wedding dress, Eleanor followed the sounds of disturbance, deeper into the heart of Castle Morgrave, toward whatever ancient horror had awakened on her wedding night. Eleanor hurried down the winding corridors, her wedding gown whispering against the stone floors as she followed the echoing disturbances. The castle seemed to shift around her. Passages that should have led one way now twisted in unexpected directions, and shadows deepened where no shadows should have been. Torches flickered as she passed, some extinguishing entirely, plunging sections of hallway into darkness. Another crash reverberated through the castle, followed by the sound of splintering wood. Elena quickened her pace, heart hammering against her ribs. She was acting foolishly, she knew. Whatever creature had awakened was clearly dangerous enough to alarm even Darius, a being who had admitted to being something beyond human. Yet a stubborn determination drove her forward. If this was to be her home, if these people were to be under her protection as Lady Morgrave, she would not begin her tenure by cowering behind locked doors. As she rounded a corner, she nearly collided with Mrs. Harker, who clutched a silver candlestick like a weapon. The housekeeper's usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, a streak of something dark staining her sleeve. "My lady!" Mrs. Harker exclaimed, genuine terror in her eyes. "You must return to your chambers immediately. It isn't safe." "What has happened?" Elena demanded. "What creature makes those sounds?" Mrs. Harker's face paled further. "Something that should have remained imprisoned. Please, my lady." Before she could finish, a door further down the corridor burst open. A young maid, Beth, who had helped Elena dress, stumbled through, her uniform torn and blood seeping from a gash on her forehead. "It's loose," Beth gasped, collapsing against the wall. "The binding chamber, it's broken free." Elena rushed to the maid's side, tearing a strip of fabric from her petticoat to press against the wound. "Who did this to you? What binding chamber?" Mrs. Harker moved between them and the open doorway, her candlestick raised defensively. "The master keeps certain entities contained within the castle for research purposes. One has escaped." "Entities?" Elena repeated, helping Beth to her feet. "You mean he imprisons supernatural creatures here?" "Not creatures, my lady," Beth whispered, her eyes darting fearfully toward the shadows. "The others, the ones like him." A low, inhuman growl emanated from the darkness beyond the doorway. Mrs. Harker stepped back, pushing Elena and Beth behind her with surprising strength for a woman of her years. "Run!" the housekeeper commanded. "Take the service stairs at the end of this passage. Get to the chapel, consecrated ground. Go!" Eleanor hesitated. "But you—" "I've served Castle Morgrave for 63 years, my lady. I know how to handle these matters." Mrs. Harker's stern facade cracked slightly. "Please, the master would never forgive me if harm came to his bride on her wedding night." The growl transformed into a chilling laugh, a sound that contained no mirth, only hunger and malice. A figure appeared in the doorway, moving with a jerking, unnatural gait. It had once been a man, perhaps handsome before decay had claimed him. Now his flesh hung in grey tatters, eyes glowing with the same red light Elena had glimpsed in Darius's gaze. "The bride!" the creature rasped, lips pulling back from elongated teeth. "I smell her. Fresh blood, untainted." Mrs. Harker thrust her candlestick forward. "You will not touch her, Aldrich. Your quarrel is with the master, not his wife. Everything of his is mine to destroy," the creature Aldrich snarled. "As was decreed when he betrayed our covenant." He lunged forward with unnatural speed. Mrs. Harker met his charge with surprising agility, driving the silver candlestick into his chest. The creature shrieked in pain, smoke rising where the silver touched his decaying flesh. "Go!" Mrs. Harker shouted over her shoulder. This time, Elena obeyed, half carrying the injured Beth toward the service stairs. Behind them, the sounds of struggle intensified, followed by a terrible wet thud and silence. Elena didn't look back, focusing instead on their escape. The narrow servant staircase descended in a tight spiral. Eleanor and Beth had only made it halfway down when a rasping voice echoed from above. "I can smell you, Bride of Moorgrave. Your fear is exquisite." Eleanor pushed Beth ahead of her. "Keep going. Find help." "My lady, I can't leave you." "You can and you will," Elena commanded, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "Tell Darius what's happened. Go!" As Beth continued downward, Elena reached for the only weapon available, one of the pearl-headed pins securing her veil. She pulled it free, the long, sharp silver shaft glinting in the dim light. If silver had harmed the creature before... She pressed herself against the wall of the staircase, trying to control her ragged breathing. The sound of shuffling movement drew closer, accompanied by a nauseating odor of decay. "Hiding won't save you," Aldrich crooned. "Moorgrave's women never survive long. I should know. I helped him dispose of the last one." Elena's blood ran cold. The last one? There had been others before her? The creature's grey fingers appeared on the railing, bits of flesh sloughing off as he descended. Elena waited until his head came into view, then struck with all her strength, driving the silver pin into his temple. Aldrich screamed, a sound like tearing metal. He clawed at the pin, but each touch of his fingers to the silver caused more of his flesh to smoke and dissolve. Elena didn't wait to see more. She hiked up her wedding gown and fled down the stairs, the creature's agonized howls echoing behind her. At the bottom of the staircase, she found herself in a section of the castle she hadn't seen before. Older, cruder stone walls, the air thick with dust and the smell of abandonment. No sign of Beth or anyone else. She'd hoped the stairs would lead to the chapel, but instead she had descended into what appeared to be the oldest part of the castle. A door to her right stood ajar. With the sounds of pursuit resuming behind her, Elena slipped through it, finding herself in a long, low-ceilinged chamber lined with shelves. Ancient texts and strange artifacts filled every available space. Glass jars containing specimens she couldn't identify, weapons of designs she'd never seen, scrolls bound with materials that didn't look like leather or parchment. Elena pushed the heavy door closed and searched for a lock. Finding none, she wedged a nearby chair under the handle, a flimsy barrier, but it might buy her time. She needed a weapon more substantial than hairpins if she hoped to survive. Moving deeper into the room, she examined the displayed items. Most were incomprehensible to her, crystals that pulsed with inner light, devices of intricate metalwork whose purpose she couldn't guess, vials of liquids in colors she had no names for. On one shelf, however, she found something recognizable, a slender dagger with a silver blade and a hilt wrapped in what looked like braided human hair. She had just grasped it when a violent impact shook the door. The chair leg splintered, but held. Another blow followed, stronger than the first. "You've only made things worse for yourself, bride," Aldrich called, his voice distorted by rage and pain. "I plan to kill you quickly. Now I'll make you suffer as he made me suffer." Elena backed away from the door, the dagger clutched in her trembling hand. There appeared to be no other exit from the room. She was trapped. The third impact broke through. The chair collapsed, and the door swung open to reveal Aldrich, more horrifying than before. The silver pin still protruded from his temple, the wound around it blackened and smoking. Half his face had dissolved into a greyish pulp, exposing bone beneath. Yet his eyes still burned with that terrible red light, fixed on Elena with murderous intent. "What are you?" she whispered, raising the dagger defensively. "I am what your husband made me," Aldrich snarled, advancing slowly now, savouring her fear. "I am the price of his ambition." He took another step, and Elena retreated until her back pressed against the shelves. Something cold and metallic shifted behind her. Without taking her eyes off the creature, she reached back with her free hand and felt the object, a chain of some sort, attached to what felt like a medallion. "Did he tell you what he is?" Aldrich asked, his ruined mouth twisting into a grotesque smile. "Did he tell you what you've married?" "He told me enough," Eleanor replied, trying to keep her voice steady. Her fingers closed around the medallion, an inexplicable warmth spreading through her palm as she did. Aldrich laughed, the sound like bones grinding together. "He told you nothing. Darius Morgrave has walked this earth for 4 centuries, bride. He has worn many names, seduced many women, and betrayed everyone who ever trusted him." Elena's mind reeled. 4 centuries. It seemed impossible. And yet, hadn't she sensed something ancient in Darius's eyes, in the weight of his presence? "We were brothers once," Aldrich continued, now close enough that Elena could see the maggots writhing in the exposed flesh of his neck. "Not in blood, but in covenant. 7 of us, seeking the secrets of immortality. We succeeded, after a fashion." He gestured to his decaying body. "This is what becomes of us, without fresh blood. Darius discovered the method to retain our humanity. A ritual requiring the sacrifice of innocent lives. When I objected, he imprisoned me, feeding me just enough to prevent true death, but too little to maintain my form." "Why should I believe you?" Eleanor demanded, though dread pooled in her stomach. She gripped both the dagger and the mysterious medallion tighter. "Ask him about Katerina," Aldrich hissed. "Ask him about his last bride, who also wore that dress you're wearing now. Ask him what happens when he tires of his playthings." Before Elena could respond, Aldrich lunged forward with supernatural speed. She raised the dagger, but knew she would be too slow. A blinding light erupted from the medallion in her hand, filling the chamber. Aldrich shrieked, shielding his eyes, his decaying flesh smoking wherever the light touched it. "Impossible!" he howled. "The seal of Solomon! How can you wield it?" Elena had no idea what he meant or how she had activated the medallion, but she seized the opportunity. She thrust the silver dagger forward, driving it deep into Aldrich's chest, where his heart should be. The creature convulsed, his body jerking unnaturally. The red light in his eyes flickered, then extinguished like snuffed candles. A sighing sound escaped his lipless mouth, almost like relief, before his body crumbled into grey ash that scattered across the stone floor. Elena stood frozen, the dagger clutched in one hand, the still glowing medallion in the other. The medallion, a disc of gold inscribed with symbols she didn't recognize, pulsed warmly against her palm, as if alive. "Elena!" Darius's voice broke through her shock. He stood in the doorway, his immaculate wedding attire now torn and stained with what looked like blood. His eyes, still inhumanly dark, widened as they took in the scene, the pile of ash, the dagger in her hand, and the glowing medallion. "How are you holding that?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "The seal burns anyone of my kind who touches it." "I don't know," Eleanor replied honestly. She looked down at the medallion, which continued to emit a soft golden light. "It felt right in my hand." Darius approached cautiously, stopping several feet away. "That medallion belonged to the man who taught me what I know of the occult sciences. It is imbued with power specifically designed to repel and destroy creatures like myself and Aldrich." "And what exactly are you?" Elena asked, not lowering the dagger. Aldrich's accusations echoed in her mind. Darius's expression tightened. I believe the modern term is vampire, though that word encompasses many inaccuracies. We called ourselves the Covenant of Seven, scholars who sought to transcend death. Aldrich said you betrayed them, that you sacrificed innocent lives. Did he also tell you he was the first to taste human blood, that he slaughtered an entire village in his bloodlust? Darius's voice carried centuries of bitterness. Yes, I betrayed them, to save humanity from what we had become. He took another tentative step closer. Please, Elena, lower the seal. It cannot distinguish between myself and creatures like Aldrich. It causes me considerable pain. Elena hesitated, studying her husband's face. Despite his inhuman eyes and unnatural pallor, she saw genuine anguish there, and something else. Fear, not for himself, but for her. Slowly, she lowered the medallion, though she kept hold of the dagger. The golden light dimmed, but didn't extinguish completely. Mrs. Harker, she said suddenly, remembering the housekeeper's brave stand. Is she alive, though severely injured? Darius replied. I found her after dealing with 2 others of my kind who had also escaped. Beth led me to her. Relief flooded through Eleanor. And the other creatures? Are there more loose in the castle? The bindings on the remaining 2 still hold. I've reinforced them. Darius gestured to the bloodstains on his clothing. It appears Aldrich had been planning this for some time. He corrupted several of my newer servants, turning them into his thralls. He looked at the pile of ash on the floor. You destroyed him completely. I've been trying to grant him true death for decades. He was too far gone for redemption. He said, Elena swallowed hard. He said there were others before me, other brides. Something ancient and sorrowful passed across Darius's features. Yes, there have been others. What happened to them? To Katerina? Darius closed his eyes briefly, as if the name caused him physical pain. That is a longer conversation than we should have standing in my collection chamber with you still holding weapons that could destroy me. Elena didn't move. I need to know what I've married, now. After a long moment, Darius nodded. Very well. I have lived for over 400 years, Elena. In that time I have had 3 wives. The first, Margaret, died of natural causes after 40 years of marriage. I loved her deeply, but I couldn't bring myself to turn her when she begged me to in her final illness. He walked to one of the shelves, carefully avoiding coming too close to Eleanor and the medallion. The second, Isabella, discovered what I was and tried to destroy me. In the struggle that followed, she fell from the castle battlements. And Katerina? Elena pressed, noting how he tensed at the name. Katerina was different. She was already dying when I found her. Consumption. I offered her a choice, death or eternal life at my side. His voice grew distant, lost in memory. She chose me, and I turned her. For a decade we were happy. Then the bloodlust began to consume her. She couldn't control it as I had learned to do. What happened? Darius turned back to face her, his expression haunted. She began hunting in the villages, children primarily. When I confronted her, she swore she would destroy everything I cared for. I had no choice but to imprison her with the others. Is she still here? In the castle? Eleanor felt cold dread spreading through her. No. She escaped during a severe storm 20 years ago. I tracked her across 3 countries before finally ending her existence. His voice broke slightly. I held her as she returned to ash, and she thanked me for freeing her from what she had become. Elena studied him, trying to reconcile the monster from village tales with the man, creature, before her. Why marry again after such tragedy? Why me? Because I recognized something in you when I first saw you in the village, Darius said quietly. A strength of spirit rare in any era. And because 4 centuries of solitude becomes unbearable. He approached slowly, hands slightly raised to show he meant no threat. I never intended to turn you, Elena. I sought a human companion, someone to remind me of the humanity I struggled to preserve in myself. The debt my family's protection. Was that all a ploy to obtain me? No, Darius said firmly. I did buy your family's debt, but I would have forgiven it regardless of your answer to my proposal. I am not a monster who would force a woman into marriage through coercion. Eleanor's grip on both weapons relaxed slightly. Yet you keep prisoners in your castle. You've killed. Only those who threatened innocent lives. The three who escaped tonight have existed for centuries, Elena. They cannot die naturally, and they cannot control their bloodlust. Imprisonment was the only mercy I could offer my former brothers. A shout from elsewhere in the castle interrupted them. A servant calling Darius's name. The crisis was clearly not yet over. I must go, Darius said, his expression troubled. There is damage to contain, injured servants to tend to. I'll help, Elena said, surprising herself with the offer. Darius looked taken aback. After everything you've learned? After what you've seen? I made vows tonight, Elena replied steadily. I am Lady Morgrave now, and these people are under my protection as much as yours. She placed the medallion carefully back on its shelf, but kept the dagger. This doesn't mean I fully trust you. There is much more I need to know, and I will tell you everything, Darius promised, after we've secured the castle. As they moved to leave the chamber, Elena paused. One last question. The medallion, the seal, you called it, why could I touch it when you cannot? Darius studied her with newfound curiosity. The seal of Solomon responds only to those with pure intentions and... He hesitated. Certain bloodlines. My mentor believed some humans carried the blood of ancient protectors, those tasked with maintaining the balance between natural and supernatural worlds. You think I'm one of these protectors? I don't know, Darius admitted. But it would explain why I felt drawn to you beyond all reason. Perhaps fate has a greater purpose for our union than either of us realized. Before Elena could respond, the castle shook with a violent tremor. Dust rained from the ceiling, and distant screams echoed through the corridors. The other prisoners, Darius said, alarm filling his voice. Something's wrong with the bindings. We must hurry. As they raced from the chamber, Elena clutched the silver dagger tightly. Her wedding night had revealed truths beyond her wildest imaginings, and dawn seemed impossibly distant. What other secrets did Castle Morgrave hold? What powers might lie dormant in her own blood? And could she trust her immortal husband, whose existence had spanned centuries marked by both protection and bloodshed? The castle trembled again, more violently than before. Whatever was breaking free would not be as easily defeated as Aldrich. As she followed Darius into the darkness, Elena knew with grim certainty that her trial as Lady Morgrave had only just begun. The castle's foundations groaned as Elena and Darius hurried through corridors now filled with panicked servants. The tremors intensified, each stronger than the last, sending ancient dust cascading from the vaulted ceilings. "What's happening?" Eleanor demanded, struggling to keep pace with Darius's supernatural speed. "The binding chamber," Darius replied, his voice taut with concern. "Aldrich must have damaged the central ward before escaping. The others are breaking free." They descended a spiral staircase that seemed to plunge into the very heart of the mountain upon which Castle Morgrave was built. The air grew colder, damper, and Elena could feel a strange pressure building in her ears, as if she were diving deep underwater. "How many others?" she asked, clutching the silver dagger tighter. "Two," Darius answered grimly. "Lucien and Isabeau, the most dangerous of the seven. More dangerous than Aldrich?" Aldrich was consumed by rage and decay. Lucien and Isabeau, Darius hesitated. They retained their faculties, their brilliance, and their ambition. They reached a heavy iron door inscribed with symbols similar to those on the Seal of Solomon. Darius pressed his palm against it, wincing as the metal seared his flesh. The door swung open, revealing a cavernous chamber hewn from the living rock. The scene inside stole Elena's breath. At the center of the chamber stood a massive stone plinth carved with intricate runes that pulsed with eerie blue light. Atop it rested two glass sarcophagi, each containing a figure that appeared to be sleeping, a man and a woman, their faces possessing the same unearthly beauty as Darius. But the glass of both sarcophagi was spider-webbed with cracks, and the blue light of the runes flickered erratically. "The binding is failing," Darius muttered, rushing toward the plinth. "We have minutes at most." As Eleanor followed, she noticed dark alcoves lining the walls, 6 in total, 1 for each sarcophagus. 3 stood empty, 3 contained piles of ash and bone. "Your other brothers?" she asked. "Those who chose final death over imprisonment," Darius confirmed, his voice hollow. "Over the centuries, some begged me to end their suffering. I granted their wish." He knelt beside the plinth, examining the damaged runes. "The containment spell requires blood to strengthen it. My blood, as their creator." "Creator?" Elena echoed. "I thought you said you were all scholars who discovered immortality together." "A simplified truth," Darius admitted, rolling up his sleeve. "I discovered the ritual. I performed it on myself first, then offered it to the others. Their transformation, their very existence, all stems from me." He drew a small knife from his boot and sliced his palm without flinching. As his blood, darker and thicker than human blood, dripped onto the runes, their light stabilized momentarily. "It's not enough," he growled in frustration. "The damage is too extensive." A soft laugh emanated from the female sarcophagus. Though the glass was still intact, the woman inside, Isabeau, had opened her eyes. They glowed an unearthly amber, fixing on Elena with predatory interest. "The great Darius Morgrave, brought low at last," Isabeau's voice penetrated the glass, melodious yet venomous. "And with a new bride to witness your failure. How delicious." The male figure, Lucian, stirred as well, his eyes snapping open to reveal irises of glacial blue. Unlike Aldrich's decaying form, both imprisoned vampires appeared perfectly preserved, beautiful, ageless, and terrifying. "The binding will hold," Darius insisted, pressing his bleeding hand more firmly against the runes. "Not this time, brother," Lucian replied, his voice cultured and calm despite the circumstances. "Aldrich planned well. He poisoned your servants, weakened the wards gradually over months. By the time you noticed, it was too late." Another tremor shook the chamber, more violent than before. The cracks in both sarcophagi widened. "Elena, go back upstairs," Darius ordered, not taking his eyes from the failing containment. "I'm not leaving you," she replied stubbornly. "How touching," Isabeau crooned. "She actually cares for you, Darius. Did you tell her what happens to the women who love you? Did you mention how your first wife really died?" "Silence!" Darius snapped, but Elena saw uncertainty flash across his face. "You said Margaret died naturally," she said slowly. "Because that's what he needed to believe," Lucian interjected. "Margaret discovered what we truly were, what he truly was. She tried to flee, to warn the village. Darius caught her on the castle bridge. In his rage, he drained her dry." "Lies," Darius hissed, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" Isabeau asked sweetly. "Tell me, Darius, have you shown your new bride your collection yet? The one hidden behind the false wall in your bedchamber? The locks of hair, the jewelry, the little mementos you've kept from every woman who caught your fancy over the centuries?" Elena felt cold dread pool in her stomach. "Darius." "Later," he said tersely. "We need to reinforce the binding now." The glass of both sarcophagi cracked further, pieces beginning to fall away. Lucien pressed his hand against the weakening barrier, a smile playing on his perfect lips. "There will be no later," he promised. "Only blood and retribution." Elena's mind raced. She still held the silver dagger, but would it be enough against 2 ancient vampires? The medallion had repelled Aldrich, but it remained in the collection chamber, and she had no idea how to use it properly. A sudden realization struck her. "The seal responded to me," she said. "You said it recognizes certain bloodlines, protectors." Darius looked up sharply. "Yes, but Could my blood strengthen the binding? His eyes widened. Theoretically, yes. The blood of a protector carries its own power, but I won't risk you. It's not a risk if it's my choice, Eleanor insisted, moving closer to the plinth. Tell me what to do. Isabeau laughed again, the sound like breaking crystal. Oh, I like this one, Darius. So brave, so foolish, her blood will taste exquisite when I drain her. Darius hesitated, clearly torn, but another violent tremor decided for him. Large chunks of glass fell away from both sarcophagi. In moments, the prisoners would be free. Place your hand beside mine, he instructed quickly. Let your blood mix with mine on the central rune, the one shaped like a star. Elena knelt beside him, setting down the silver dagger to take his offered knife. She steeled herself, then drew the blade across her palm. The pain was sharp, but bearable. She pressed her bleeding hand against the indicated rune, her blood mingling with Darius's. The effect was instantaneous. The blue light flared brilliant white, spreading outward from their joined hands like liquid lightning, engulfing the entire plinth. The remaining glass of both sarcophagi suddenly reformed, sealing seamlessly as if it had never been broken. Isabeau shrieked in fury, her beautiful face contorting into something monstrous as the containment reasserted itself. Lucien slammed his fists against the newly strengthened glass, but it didn't even vibrate under the impact. Impossible, he whispered, genuine fear replacing his confident demeanor. The tremors ceased. The castle stilled. The binding runes glowed with steady, pulsing light, no longer blue or white, but a deep, rich gold. Darius stared at the phenomenon in astonishment. I've never seen the binding manifest like this, he murmured. Your blood. It's changed the nature of the containment itself. Eleanor felt strangely light-headed, but also exhilarated. Something had awakened within her when her blood touched the runes, a sense of purpose, of power that she'd never experienced before. How long will it hold them? She asked. Indefinitely, if the golden light is any indication, Darius replied, carefully wrapping a handkerchief around Elena's wounded hand. His touch was gentle, almost reverent. You've done something I thought impossible. You'll regret this, Bride of Morgrave, Isabeau hissed, her voice muffled by the thickened glass. When you discover what he truly is, you'll wish you had let us free to destroy him. Enough, Darius commanded, waving his hand in a complex gesture. Both sarcophagi frosted over, obscuring the prisoners within. They can no longer hear or see us. He turned to Elena, his expression troubled. We should tend to your wound properly and check on the injured servants. Not yet, Elena said firmly. First, you will answer my questions. All of them. No more half-truths or simplified versions. Darius hesitated, then nodded reluctantly. Very well, but not here. These walls have absorbed too much hatred and pain over the centuries. They ascended from the binding chamber in silence, Darius sealing the iron door behind them with both conventional locks and what appeared to be magical sigils drawn in his own blood. The castle was quieter now, the immediate crisis averted, though servants still hurried about tending to damaged and injured colleagues. Darius led Elena to a small circular room in one of the castle's towers. Unlike the opulent chambers she had seen earlier, this space was austere, a simple wooden table, 2 chairs, and walls lined with books. A single window overlooked the mountains, now silvered with moonlight. My private study, Darius explained. No one enters here but me. He gestured for her to sit, then carefully unwrapped her injured hand. The cut was deeper than she had realized, but as he cleansed it with liquid from a crystal bottle, the pain subsided. The accusations Lucien and Isabeau made, Elena began, watching his face closely. About Margaret. Were they true? Darius's hand stilled. For a long moment he didn't answer, his ancient eyes fixed on her wound. Not as they presented it, he finally said, his voice barely audible. But not entirely false either. He applied a salve to her cut, his touch clinical yet somehow intimate. Margaret discovered what I was after 20 years of marriage, I had been careful, feeding only on animals and the terminally ill in distant villages, but she found my journal, my records of the Covenant. What happened? Elena pressed when he fell silent again. She didn't try to flee or warn anyone. She confronted me directly, demanded to know if I had ever truly loved her or if she had merely been a convenient facade for my immortal existence. His voice grew strained. We argued. She struck me in anger. I lost control of my nature. When I came back to myself, she lay dead in my arms. The raw pain in his voice was unmistakable. I did not mean to kill her. It was the first and only time I have ever harmed someone I loved. Her death nearly destroyed me. I considered walking into the sunrise and ending my cursed existence. Why didn't you? Elena asked softly. Because I knew the others of the Covenant would continue. Without me to check them, to imprison those who couldn't control their bloodlust, they would slaughter thousands. His eyes met hers, ancient and sorrowful. I live with Margaretta's death every day. I promised her as she died in my arms that I would atone by protecting others from creatures like myself. Elena processed this, weighing his words against the night's events, against his actions since she had met him. And the collection Isabeau mentioned, behind the false wall. Something like embarrassment crossed Darius's features. Not what she implied. Yes, I've kept mementos, not just from lovers, but from all those who have touched my long life in meaningful ways. Friends, mentors, students, a ribbon from Margaret's hair, a page from Isabella's journal, the physician who taught me to use my immortality to heal rather than harm. I kept his spectacles. He looked away. When you live for centuries, material connections to those you've lost become precious. Without them, the past becomes a dream, those you loved reduced to shadows. Show me, Elena requested. Darius seemed about to refuse, then nodded once. As you wish. He led her through the castle to the master bedchamber, a room she had not yet seen. Like his private study, it was less ornate than she expected, furnished with pieces that spoke of different eras, yet somehow formed a harmonious whole. At the far end, a massive bed with dark hangings awaited, untouched. Darius approached a seemingly solid wall beside the fireplace. He pressed his hand against a specific stone, murmuring words Elena couldn't understand. The wall shimmered, then became transparent, revealing a small shrine-like alcove. Glass cabinets lined the space, containing hundreds of carefully preserved objects. A child's wooden toy soldier, a faded blue ribbon, a tarnished pocket watch, a pair of wire-rimmed spectacles, pressed flowers, letters, sketches, small pieces of jewelry. Each item had a tiny label with a name and date. My remembrances, Darius said quietly. 4 centuries of connections. Some brief, some spanning decades. Elena stepped closer, examining the artifacts. The date stretched back to 1582. The oldest label read, Elisabetta, my teacher. The items were arranged chronologically, telling the story of an immortal existence through mundane objects made sacred by memory. What struck her most was the care with which everything had been preserved. This was not a trophy collection of conquests, as Isabeau had implied. This was a museum of love and loss, curated by someone desperately trying to hold on to their humanity across an inhuman lifespan. You truly loved them, she said. It wasn't a question. As much as I was capable of love, Darius replied. More completely with some than others. But yes, I cared for each person represented here. Elena's gaze fell on 3 items displayed more prominently than the rest. A simple gold band labeled Margaret, my wife, 1603-1643. A silver locket containing a miniature portrait labeled Isabella, my wife, 1712-1719. And a red silk rose labeled Caterina, my wife in creation, 1832-1859. And now me, she said softly. If you still wish it, Darius replied. After tonight, I would understand if you wanted to leave Castle Morgrave. I can arrange for you and your family to live comfortably elsewhere, far from the dangers my existence brings." Elena considered his offer. The sensible choice would be to flee this place of ancient horrors and immortal conflicts, to return to a normal human life, albeit a comfortable one. Yet something held her there, something beyond her vows or concern for her family's welfare. The golden light that had emanated from her blood, the way the seal of Solomon had responded to her touch, the sense of awakening power she had felt in the binding chamber. "Isabeau called me the Bride of Moorgrave," she said thoughtfully. "There seems to be more significance to that title than I realized." Darius's expression grew troubled. "There are old prophecies about my bloodline, both my mortal family and the immortal covenant I created. One speaks of a bride who carries the blood of protectors, whose union with the last scion of Moorgrave will either redeem or destroy him." "You knew this when you chose me?" Elena asked, surprised. "I suspected your heritage when I observed how the villagers naturally deferred to you despite your family's poverty. I became certain when I saw you touch iron rowan berries without harm, a test of protector blood." He shook his head ruefully. "But prophecies are dangerous things to court deliberately. I chose you because of who you are, Elena, not what some ancient text claims you might be." Before she could respond, a sharp knock interrupted them. Darius waved his hand, and the hidden alcove shimmered back into solid wall. "Enter!" he called. Mrs. Harker stood in the doorway, her arm in a sling, but otherwise recovered from her encounter with Aldrich. "Forgive the intrusion, master, but there's a situation in the village. Reports of attacks, missing children." Darius tensed. "Impossible. Lucien and Isabeau are contained. Aldrich is destroyed." "Nevertheless, 3 children have vanished since nightfall," Mrs. Harker replied grimly. "And a woodcutter was found drained of blood at the forest's edge." Elena felt a chill run through her. "Could there be others, more of your kind that you don't know about?" "No," Darius said firmly. "I have tracked every vampire in this region for centuries. Unless—" his voice trailed off, his expression growing distant, as if recalling something long forgotten. "Unless what?" Elena pressed. "Unless Katerina created others before I destroyed her," he said quietly. "If she established a bloodline of her own, they might be drawn here by the disturbance in the binding chamber. Vampiric offspring can sense their creator's bloodline, especially in moments of power." Mrs. Harker cleared her throat. "There's more, master. A messenger arrived from the village. The attacks began after a stranger arrived, a noblewoman traveling with several servants. She's taken residence in the old Blackwood hunting lodge." Eleanor gasped. "But that's not possible. The Blackwoods lost that property generations ago." "Apparently, she presented documents proving her claim to it," Mrs. Harker continued. "She calls herself Lady Katerina Blackwood." The blood drained from Darius's face. "Katerina, no, I destroyed her. I watched her turn to ash in my arms." "You said that happened 20 years ago," Elena said slowly. "Could she have somehow regenerated, returned from destruction?" "No vampire has that power," Darius insisted, but uncertainty clouded his features. Unless she found the Codex Sanguinis." "The what?" "An ancient text thought destroyed centuries ago. It contained rituals of resurrection, forbidden blood magic, that even the Covenant considered too dangerous to attempt." He paced the room, agitation evident in every movement. "If she somehow obtained it before her death, created contingencies—" "Blackwood," Elena murmured. "She's taken my family name. Why?" Darius stopped pacing, turning to her with dawning horror. "Because she knows about the prophecy, about you. She's declaring her intention to destroy not just me, but everything connected to my redemption." He strode to a cabinet and withdrew a sword with ancient symbols etched along its blade. "I must go to the village, immediately." "Not alone," Elena said firmly, retrieving the silver dagger she had placed in the folds of her wedding dress. "If she's targeting my family name, then my family could be in danger." "It's too dangerous." I am Lady Morgrave now, Eleanor interrupted, a new confidence in her voice. And apparently, I carry the blood of protectors. I will not cower in this castle while a creature wearing my name threatens my family and the innocent villagers under our protection. Darius studied her for a long moment, then nodded once. Very well. But stay close to me at all times. If Katerina has truly returned, she is more dangerous than anything you've faced tonight. I'll have the horses prepared, Mrs. Harker said, already moving toward the door. No, Darius replied grimly. We cannot afford to waste time. There is a faster way. He turned to Elena. Do you trust me? She hesitated only briefly before answering. Yes. He extended his hand to her. Then come. It's time you learned what it truly means to be the bride of Morgrave. The moonlight bathed the valley in an otherworldly glow as Elena and Darius stood on the highest battlement of Castle Morgrave. The wind whipped her wedding gown around her legs, the once pristine fabric now torn and stained with blood and ash. What do you mean by a faster way? Elena asked, clutching the silver dagger tightly. Darius turned to her, his ancient eyes reflecting the silver of the moon. One of the gifts of my condition is transformation. I can travel as mist, as shadow, or as something with wings. As she watched, his form began to change. His shoulders broadened, his elegant frame elongating and darkening. Great wings unfurled from his back, leathery and vast, spanning twice his height. His face remained recognizable, though sharpened and more predatory. This is what I truly am, he said, his voice deeper, resonating with power. The legends of vampire and bat combined. Elena should have been terrified, yet she felt only awe. Will you carry me? If you'll permit it. She stepped forward without hesitation. My family is in danger. Take me to them. Darius swept her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Hold tightly to me, he instructed, and close your eyes if the height frightens you. Before she could respond, he leaped from the battlement. Elena's stomach lurched as they plummeted, but then his wings caught the air, and they soared upward. The sensation was unlike anything she had ever experienced, terrifying and exhilarating in equal measure. The valley spread beneath them, a patchwork of moonlit fields and dark forests. Elena could see the tiny glow of Ravenscroft village, and beyond it, the isolated shape of the old Blackwood hunting lodge, where a singular light burned in defiance of the surrounding darkness. There! She called over the rush of wind. That's the lodge! Darius banked sharply, descending toward the structure. As they approached, Elena could make out figures moving in the clearing before the lodge, human shapes dragging what appeared to be struggling children. They landed in the forest's edge, Darius transforming back to his human form as his feet touched the ground. He steadied Elena as she regained her balance. 3 thralls, he whispered, nodding toward the figures, newly turned by the look of them. They still retain human appearance, but have sacrificed their will to their creator. The children? Elena asked urgently. Alive. Katerina would want them that way. Fresh blood is more potent, especially from the innocent. Elena gripped her dagger. How do we free them? Destroy the thralls first, Darius replied, unsheathing his sword. Then confront Katerina. Will silver harm them? Yes, but not as effectively as it would a full vampire. Aim for the heart or sever the head. Elena nodded grimly. I'll take the one on the left. He's smaller. Darius looked as if he might object, then nodded. Stay in the moonlight. Thralls are weaker there. They moved silently through the trees. As they drew closer, Elena could hear the children whimpering, could see their small forms being dragged toward the lodge's entrance. Her blood boiled at their terror. Darius gave a slight nod, and they burst from cover simultaneously. Eleanor's target turned at her approach, revealing a face she recognized with horror. John Miller, the village blacksmith. His eyes, once kind, now glowed with an unholy red light. "Mr. Miller!" she called, hoping to reach whatever humanity remained. "Let the child go!" The thrall snarled, releasing his captive to lunge at Elena. She dodged his first attack, remembering Darius's advice about staying in the moonlight. The child, little Mary from the baker's family, scrambled away, sobbing. "Run to the trees, Mary!" Elena shouted, circling her opponent. "Hide!" Miller attacked again, his movements unnaturally fast but clumsy, as if he wasn't fully in control of his enhanced strength. Elena feinted left, then struck with the dagger, driving it deep into his chest. The thrall shrieked, black blood oozing from the wound. He staggered but didn't fall. "The heart!" Darius called from across the clearing, where he had already dispatched his opponent. "You must pierce the heart precisely." Eleanor pulled the dagger free and struck again, this time angling upward beneath the ribs. Miller convulsed, his eyes briefly clearing as death claimed him. "Eleanor!" he whispered in confusion before collapsing. There was no time to mourn. The third thrall had abandoned his captive and fled into the lodge. The children huddled together by the trees, terrified but alive. "Get them to safety," Elena told Darius, moving toward the lodge. "I'll follow the thrall." "No!" Darius seized her arm. "Katerina will destroy you. The children need protection. You're faster, stronger. Get them back to the village and return. I'll reconnoiter only, I promise." After a moment's hesitation, Darius nodded. 5 minutes. If I don't find you outside when I return, I'm coming in after you." He gathered the 3 children, speaking soothingly to calm their fears, and disappeared into the forest with supernatural speed. Elena approached the lodge cautiously. The building had once been grand, a testament to her family's former prosperity. Now it stood dilapidated, its grandeur faded, but still discernible. Light spilled from a single window, casting long shadows across the overgrown garden. She crept to the illuminated window and peered inside. What she saw made her blood run cold. A woman of extraordinary beauty sat in a high-backed chair before a roaring fire. Her hair was midnight black, cascading over shoulders left bare by a crimson gown that pooled around her like spilled blood. At her feet knelt the remaining thrall, his head bowed in subservience, but it was the woman's face that froze Elena in place. A face eerily similar to her own. The same green eyes, the same high cheekbones and full lips. It was like looking into a mirror that reflected a darker, more seductive version of herself. "You've failed me," the woman, Katerina, said to the thrall, her voice musical yet cutting. "Where are my offerings?" "Forgive me, mistress," the thrall grovelled. Darius Moregrave appeared, and a woman with him, his new bride. Katerina laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "So she's come to me. How convenient. Shall I hunt her for you, mistress?" "No need." Katerina smiled, her gaze shifting to the window directly where Elena stood. "She's already here. Aren't you my dear descendant?" Elena gasped, instinctively backing away from the window, but it was too late. The front door of the lodge flew open with a bang, torn from its hinges by an invisible force. "Come in, Elena," Katerina called. "Let's meet properly. Family should know one another after all." Something in her voice compelled obedience. Eleanor found herself moving forward despite her fear, entering the lodge, her feet carrying her to the room where Katerina waited. Up close, the resemblance was even more unsettling. Katerina could have been her sister, or more accurately, what Elena might become with centuries of dark power enhancing her natural features. "What do you mean, descendant?" Elena demanded, gripping her dagger behind the folds of her dress. Katerina smiled, revealing delicate fangs. "Did Darius never tell you? The Blackwood line is my line. I was born Katerina Blackwood in 1809. When Darius turned me, I had already borne a child, a daughter, sent away to be raised by distant relatives after my death. That daughter was your great-great-grandmother." The revelation struck Elena like a physical blow. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Look at us, Elena. The resemblance is unmistakable. Why do you think Darius chose you? You're the very image of his greatest love and his greatest failure." "If that's true," Elena said carefully, "why would you target your own bloodline? Those children you kidnapped, they're innocent. Innocent blood is most potent for the ritual I require. Katerina rose from her chair, moving with hypnotic grace. As for my bloodline, it has served its purpose. It produced you, the key to my full resurrection. She gestured to the thrall, who scrambled to retrieve something from a nearby table. An ancient book, bound in what appeared to be human skin. The Codex Sanguinis. Darius thought he destroyed me, Katerina continued, running a pale finger along the book's spine. He did, in a manner of speaking, but I had prepared. The Codex taught me how to anchor my essence to my mortal bloodline, to slowly regenerate over decades, gathering strength from each generation until I could fully manifest again. The Protector blood, Elena realized. You knew about it. Clever girl. Yes, the Blackwoods carried two powerful bloodlines, my vampiric essence and the ancient Protector lineage from your grandfather's side. A rare combination. When they converged in you, it created the perfect vessel. Cold dread washed over Elena. Vessel? For what? For me? Katerina's smile widened. I need a body, Elena. This form is temporary, constructed through blood magic and the sacrifice of many lives. To truly return, I need to inhabit a body of my own bloodline, one that also carries the strength of Protector blood to withstand my essence. She circled Eleanor like a predator. The prophecy Darius fears speaks of a bride of Morgrave who will bring either redemption or destruction. He never understood that it referred to me, his first bride of Morgrave, to carry Protector blood, not to you. Eleanor backed away, raising her dagger. Stay back. I'll die before I let you take my body. Katerina laughed. Your consent is unnecessary. The ritual requires only your blood and your presence. She nodded to the thrall, who moved with sudden speed to grab Eleanor's arm. She slashed at him with the dagger, drawing black blood, but his grip remained firm. Katerina approached, producing a ceremonial knife from the folds of her gown. Your dagger is an interesting choice, she commented, eyeing the silver weapon. One of Darius's collection, I presume? Did he tell you its history? It belonged to Solomon himself, paired with the seal you encountered earlier. Despite her predicament, Elena felt a strange resonance with the dagger upon hearing these words, as if it responded to its true name being spoken. It grew warm in her hand. The seal and the dagger of Solomon were created to maintain balance, Katerina continued, unaware of the change, to protect humanity from creatures like us. Ironic that you should wield it when your blood will help unleash the greatest vampiric power this world has seen. As she spoke, the dagger in Elena's hand began to glow with the same golden light that had emanated from the binding chamber when her blood touched the runes. You're wrong, Elena said, sudden understanding flooding her. The prophecy isn't about you. The Protector blood wasn't meant to be your vessel. It was meant to be your destruction. With a surge of strength that surprised even her, Eleanor broke free from the thrall's grip. The dagger now blazed with golden fire, illuminating the room with its radiance. Katerina hissed, shielding her eyes. What is this? Balance, Elena replied, the word coming to her as if from ancient memory. As you said, that is the purpose of Solomon's weapons, to maintain balance between darkness and light. She advanced on Katerina, who retreated before the golden light. Darius sought redemption through me, not because I resemble you, but because he recognized what I truly am, what my blood truly means. You are nothing! Katerina snarled, her beautiful face contorting into something monstrous. A farm girl playing at nobility, playing at power. I am Elena Morgrave, she replied steadily, bride of Morgrave, descendant of protectors. And I reject you, ancestor. She lunged forward, driving the glowing dagger toward Katerina's heart. The vampire moved with blinding speed, catching Elena's wrist in an iron grip. Foolish child, Katerina hissed, her face inches from Elena's. Protector blood or not, you are mortal. Weak, not alone, came Darius's voice from the doorway. He stood transformed again, his vampiric nature fully manifest, yet the golden light from Elena's dagger did not repel him as it did Katerina. He crossed the threshold in a blur of movement, seizing the thrall and snapping his neck with a single motion. "How?" Katerina gasped, momentarily distracted. "How can you bear the light?" "Because he chooses to," Elena answered, twisting free of Katerina's grip. "Because redemption is a choice, made every day with every action." Understanding dawned in Darius's eyes. "The prophecy never spoke of you being my destruction, Elena. It spoke of you being my choice." He moved to Elena's side, and together they faced Katerina, who now backed toward the fireplace, the Codex Sanguinis clutched to her chest. "You cannot destroy me," she said, desperation creeping into her voice. "I am your creation, Darius, your greatest love." "You were," Darius acknowledged sadly. "But what you've become is an abomination against nature itself. The woman I loved died long ago, consumed by bloodlust and ambition. Then I'll take her with me," Katerina shrieked, lunging for Elena with supernatural speed. Darius intercepted her, but not before her nails raked across Elena's throat, drawing blood. The scent of it filled the room, and Katerina's eyes blazed with hunger and triumph. "Your blood is mine now!" she crowed. "The ritual has begun." Indeed, where Elena's blood had spilled, a strange mist began to form, swirling between the three of them. Katerina began to chant in a language that sounded ancient and forbidden, the words seeming to draw the mist toward her. Elena felt a pulling sensation, as if her very essence was being drawn out through the wound on her neck. She stumbled, growing weaker. "Elena!" Darius caught her, his face anguished. "What have you done, Katerina?" "Claimed what's mine," the vampire replied, her form beginning to glow with unholy light as she absorbed the mist. "Her life force, her protector essence, all will fuel my resurrection." Through her growing weakness, Elena remembered the golden light, the way it had responded to her blood in the binding chamber. She raised the dagger, which still glowed faintly. "Darius," she whispered, "my blood. On the dagger. Like the runes!" Understanding her intent, Darius guided her hand, helping her press her bleeding throat against the dagger's blade. As her blood touched the ancient silver, the golden light flared anew, brighter than before, filling the entire lodge with its radiance. The mist that had been flowing toward Katerina reversed direction, pulled back toward Elena. Katerina screamed in rage and pain, her partially strengthened form beginning to destabilize. "No!" she shrieked. "The ritual cannot be reversed." "It can by one of Solomon's line," Darius said, supporting Elena as she stood straighter, the dagger blazing in her hand. "By one who chooses balance over power." Together they advanced on Katerina. The vampire tried to flee, but the golden light had formed a barrier around the room. There was nowhere to run. "Please," she begged, her beautiful face contorting with fear. "Darius, for what we once were to each other, for what we were," he replied gravely. "I grant you peace." Elena thrust the dagger forward, piercing Katerina's heart. At the same moment, Darius wrapped his hand around hers on the hilt, their blood mingling on the ancient weapon. Katerina's scream faded into a sigh. For a brief moment, her face relaxed, the malevolence fading to show the woman she had once been. "Thank you," she whispered, before her body crumbled to ash. The Codex Sanguinis fell to the floor, and Darius immediately seized it, tossing it into the fireplace, where it burst into unnatural green flames. Elena collapsed into Darius's arms, exhausted but alive. The golden light receded, leaving them in the flickering glow of the normal fire. "It's over," she murmured. "Yes," Darius replied, cradling her gently. "Thanks to you." "To us," she corrected. "The prophecy wasn't about redemption or destruction. It was about choice. Your choice to seek redemption. My choice to trust you despite knowing what you are." "And now," he asked, vulnerability evident in his ancient eyes, "what do you choose now, Elena Morgrave?" She touched his face gently. I choose us. I choose to be your partner in this strange, immortal life, to help you protect rather than destroy, to find the balance between your nature and your humanity. I don't deserve such a gift, he whispered. Perhaps not, she agreed with a small smile. But that's what redemption means, receiving what we don't deserve, and choosing to be worthy of it every day thereafter. As dawn broke over the mountains, casting the first rays of light through the lodge's windows, Darius carried Elena home to Castle Morgrave. The golden light had healed her wound, but more importantly, it had awakened something dormant within her, the full power of her protector heritage, a balance to Darius's darkness. In the days that followed, Elena's father and brother came to live in a cottage on the castle grounds. The binding chamber was reinforced with new protections developed from Elena's blood and Darius's ancient knowledge. The village of Ravenscroft began to see Castle Morgrave not as a place of dread, but as a source of protection. And on moonlit nights, villagers sometimes glimpsed two figures soaring above the valley, one dark, one radiant, guardians of the balance between worlds. The immortal lord and his most unusual lady, bound not by prophecy but by choice. In Elena's chambers, a small wooden raven carved by her brother sat beside a golden wedding band. Soon, other mementos would join them in Darius's collection, tokens of a life both mortal and extraordinary, reminders that even in the darkest existence, light could be found. For the bride of Morgrave had brought neither pure redemption nor destruction, but something far more powerful, the possibility of both, and the freedom to choose between them every day for all the long centuries that stretched before them.